I just want to start by thanking Wendy, Allen, and Lumi for having me here today and giving me this opportunity. Again, my name is Jennifer McCormack, and I'm Director of Development for Corporate and Foundation Relations. And in my role, I'm the CFR liaison to the Arnold School of Public Health, as well as 3 other colleges. And I'm here today to briefly explain how corporate and foundation relations can help you secure support, non-federal funding from companies and foundations. And I seek to give you an inside look into the corporate and foundation world and how we can collaborate further. So some of you know me and some of you don't, but I got my undergraduate degree. I'm from North Carolina. I went to UNC Charlotte for undergrad. I got my master's in public administration here at USC. And I've spent the last decade working in development roles for nonprofits and institutions, including the American Heart Association, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Governor's School for Science and Math Foundation before I was here. And this is my most fulfilling role so far. Working at the university is fantastic, and I love working with the different colleges because every day is different. So thank you again for having me. So our objectives today, I just wanted to briefly describe kind of what I would like you to have a greater understanding of, the purpose of our office and our value add, including how we can support your research programs and initiatives, some general trends in corporate and foundation relations, a few funding opportunities that are either forthcoming or maybe of broad interest to faculty in the Arnold School, and then finally to generate some creative ideas for responding to a private foundation RFP. So what is the purpose of our office? We work internally with faculty and staff and externally with corporate and foundation representatives to support USC's academic, institutional, and research initiatives, priorities, and programs through financial support. What do? We are the connector. We create strategic USC partnerships with companies and foundations. We function as the central point of contact, and we know that many companies and foundations have multiple interests across the university, so we encourage companies and foundations to really look at USC in a holistic way. And then finally, we promote cross-campus, system-wide, and community-based collaborations. I'm going to show you an example, and we're going to do a little mini workshop later in our time where we're going to look at a big collaboration project and the logic model that we created for that. And then this is our team. I just wanted to show you this so you know who all you're dealing with if you ever get communications from our office. There are 4 of us that divide the 16 colleges and units and our responsibility for helping those colleges with their corporate and foundation pursuits. So I'm going to spend some time on this slide. This is a visual that really highlights what corporate and foundation relations here at USC and other universities do. We provide many services, and I think the ones that are most relevant to you is we try to, starting at the top, we try to disseminate meaningful funding opportunities. Not only are we out meeting with companies and foundations on a regular basis, but we have the rights to multiple funding opportunity databases, and we collectively subscribe to hundreds of newsletters and blogs and things like that to find unique funding opportunities that may be of interest to faculty. For the Arnold School, we typically send these opportunities to Allen and Lumi, who will kind of advise us on faculty that might be interested in specific RFPs, or we might, if we're familiar with your work, we might just reach directly to you and let you know about something that might be of interest. We also liaise with program officers and faculty. We brainstorm strategies for approaching companies and foundations. We regularly contact program staff to introduce them to faculty members who might be interested in the work of a specific foundation or might be interested in a specific RFP. And this has been very effective. And in fact, just last week, I spoke with a program officer with the Borough's Welcome Fund out of Raleigh, North Carolina, to introduce them to a faculty member in exercise science regarding an opportunity that fit well with their research in preterm birth and health. and that opportunity is forthcoming. And I think that just gave her a chance to learn more about the foundation, their priorities. You know, there's a lot that you may not read between the lines when you see an RFP that might be of interest to a foundation or a company that might be very important to them that they don't state on their website. So collectively, our team has a wide network of contacts we've made through conferences, local grant makers networks, and by working on projects across USC. Although our team has expertise in school and tools allowing us to identify funding opportunities, our true benefit comes from our team's ability to assist with communications with companies and foundations in proposal development and articulating ideas to the target audience, which leads me to my next CFR value add, which is we help align and edit proposals with foundation mission and priorities in mind. And sometimes I find that faculty are really laser focused on their research and areas of expertise, which is awesome. That's what you should be doing. But sometimes it's easy to miss subtle details that might be important to a company or foundation, such as a glowing personal statement or sustainability plans for a project. And we also provide feedback to faculty on their programs, such as creating logic models, developing budgets, things like that. Moving on to the next, we help facilitate site visits. Site visits often the final and most critical stage of a request with company and foundation. And we provide coaching and training to help faculty deliver and fine-tune presentations and prepare and troubleshoot for questions that those contacts might ask of you throughout a site visit. We know the process and the players and how to finesse the details so that your project is more attractive. And finally, we help steer it by thanking our donors, assisting with the submission of progress reports and things like that. One of the things that we do is ask companies and foundations what we can do with them so they see more of the value of USC as a partner and help them meet their goals. For instance, I met with a cancer prevention focused foundation in DC last summer, and I asked them this exact question, you know, how can we help you build a better relationship with USC and with our faculty? Which led us to coordinating a thank you video that they could use on their website and upcoming events to describe the impact of their grant making. And this really goes a long way in cultivating a positive long-term relationship and hopefully lays the groundwork for additional funding support for not just that faculty member, but everybody. Specifically, the limited funding announcements, if they're a private foundation or a company, we do that in collaboration with the Office of VP and Sponsored Awards Management. We have a good relationship with them that is growing. Obviously, it's hard to know everybody in Sponsored Awards Management and everybody that's working on the different pieces and parts of, you know, these relationships and submissions and things like that. But really what we provide is different from what they provide. A lot of what they provide is eligibility, making sure pre- and post-award administration from that standpoint is set up and ready to go. We work more with the relationship side, working directly with faculty and directly with those external entities. And that's because, so we kind of are more externally facing while they are more internally facing. But we work in collaboration, and there could definitely be a project that you submit that you work just as much with their office as you do ours, and some of it overlaps, but they certainly do things that I don't even know or understand. And we do things that, you know, that they don't foray into, if you will. Oh, and I also wanted to, and Alan pointed out a minute ago, the success rate of our office. We have found that when faculty members work with our office, we typically get a 30% return on those that we work together and collaborate on, whereas the national corporate and foundation rate for return is about 8%. So we're excited about that and hope to continue growing that. So how does it work? And we've kind of already explained this. Wendy is the primary contact within the college, and she approaches me and we may collaborate together with a faculty member to look at funding opportunities that and kind of one of the things that we're looking for are risk-taking and big ideas, a concrete concept with budget requirements, the ability to show that you're leveraging other funds. That can be a big deal to some companies and foundations, even if it's internally or in kind. I was just speaking with somebody this morning that they're looking to launch something new, and this foundation wants a 50-50 in kind and foundation or company match. And then they really want you to illustrate why your idea is unique and innovative, and we'll kind of get to some trends here in a minute that will demonstrate why that's so important. And then we have kind of already talked about the fact that we look at viable funders, and we kind of give that info to share that info with faculty and with the DoD, so we can all communicate on what might be the best alignment for your project. As people who use acronyms know, you have to define them early on. So every time you see DoD, just insert Wendy's name there, little flash. So this is one way that you can work with our office. We might just come directly to you with an opportunity. We would love for you to come to us with an opportunity. If you meet somebody at a conference and you realize that they're connected with they're a representative of a company or a foundation, feel free to come to us and let us know, hey, I've met this person, I have this idea for support. Maybe this is a company or foundation representative who's been working with you on a project tangentially for a while, and you just want to explore how you can build on that relationship in a philanthropic way. We're happy to work with you in that regard and help advise you where we can. And in some cases, those are the best options for philanthropic funding. You know, some that you may already have had a previous contract with, or you're collaborating in some other way. And we have growing resources to kind of connect those dots, including Alan and Lumi, and thank you. But it's always wonderful to have a synopsis of what you do so that we can have that in our file folder in our mind. That way, if we're meeting with somebody that we think it might align, we can, go ahead and start making those connections. So, Corporate and Foundation Philanthropy at USC, I just wanted to show some of our biggest partners so that you could get an idea of the range of companies and foundations that we work with. These relationships can be leveraged to determine interests in proposed projects and programs. And as you can imagine, some of them can be highly beneficial. Including, I wanted to give a quick example of something that we did a couple years ago that turned out really cool. I was traveling in California for a conference and was traveling between San Diego and Los Angeles, yes. And was just kind of looking at the cities that were between those two areas and found the St. Baldrick's Foundation, which is a foundation that supports childhood leukemia. Is anybody familiar with them? And nobody had ever met with them. We'd never received a gift, but I thought, there's got to be somebody at USC that's doing this research. So I asked for a visit and sat down with the person, my counterpart there, and their CEO, and just started talking to them about their relationship with their volunteers and people who support their organization in South Carolina. And it came to light that they have a very team here, if you will, in Columbia of volunteers that have been putting events on every year. And they were really interested in granting to our institution for that reason. So those volunteers could see how the work is coming back to their community. Their funding for that organization is coming back to their community and via research. And so I took that back. I was working at the College of Pharmacy at the time. Took that back to Igor Ronenson, which I'm sure some of you know, and shared that with him. And we found a grant mechanism for equipment. And this particular mechanism isn't peer-reviewed. It's kind of based more on the program officer's needs and desires to do things throughout the country and placement of projects that fit their geographic area where they have volunteers. And we got a $50,000 grant for a piece of equipment for clinical trials that he needed. And about 6 or 8 months later, we continue in this relationship with them. It's a win-win. Their volunteers are happy. And we got a research grant for another faculty member. So that was $150,000 to the College of Pharmacy that I think would have gone untapped if we had not had that conversation. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what we do and a different way that we're working with our colleges. So trends, I'd like to just talk a moment about that. So what do companies and foundations invest in? And I kind of did this in a corporate side and a foundation side in this Venn diagram and put some things in the middle. Companies are often looking for R&D and workforce development. I'm sure some of you saw in the news that the Arnold School had received a gift from the South Carolina Hospital Association to support workforce development type activities recently. And I think that goes to show, an example of a corporate investment that is beneficial to them. And then over on the right side, I can't stress enough how important mission is for private foundations, but they're also working to shape policy and cure disease. And kind of in the middle, 21st century challenges, the Sustainable Development Goals are big for both companies and foundations now. We're trying to address really big issues that we face, as well as ROI. Both companies and foundations want to know that your project is worthwhile and effective, and that your program is the best investment for making the change they want to see in the world. And that's what's really important to them. So I just wanted to quickly compare corporate foundation funding with federal funding with some very generalities. And this is things that we found and faculty members have shared. Corporate and foundation funding is also often lower amounts than federal funding, but that doesn't mean it's not significant, and it can really pave the way for you to get a federal funding in the future. There's often a less structured application process for companies and foundations. I'm sure you'd find that, as well as reporting is different and often less cumbersome. And finally, most foundations, if they do allow IDC, it's on their terms, typically 8 to 10% or less, or most of the time nothing. So those are kind of some comparisons. But they also complement each other, like I was just saying. I know that visiting, I was particularly thinking the Prevent Cancer Research Foundation and the Rivkin Center for Ovarian Cancer are both organizations that we have met with and cultivated and stewarded. And they're really proud and focused on the fact that they can get faculty to the point where they can seek federal funding. So, that's a very big deal to them. I wanted to show this because this is foundation giving by issue focus. You'll see that the foundations typically give more to education than they give to human services and health, although those two areas are incredibly significant. And if you look at corporate funding, education is the highest as well, and the rest are kind of slightly skewed a little bit differently. But I was going to mention this in a moment, but funding to higher education institutions, there's an 80-20 rule. Mostly 80% of funding is going to come from individuals to support higher education, 15% from foundations, and 5% from companies. And I hope that's helpful just in framing, kind of where you might want to think about. Wendy's covering the individual side, but there's definitely a lot more funding to be seen with foundations than there are companies. There is companies. Does anybody have a question? And then finally, support by types of support. Programs are very hot for foundations. They want to see a direct impact of their funding on people. A program would be a direct service. So one example would be like the colon cancer center, Frank Berger's center, and going out and working directly screening individuals and things like that. PASOS here is a program that receives a lot of corporate and foundation support because it's directly impacting individuals. So, and I know that that doesn't apply to everybody, but that is a great area of opportunity. Any program that we're doing where we're directly changing lives, it's really important that we know about that, the ways that maybe you're collaborating with nonprofits or providing a direct service in our community. If anyone is doing that, that's good to know. So some trends that I just wanted to go over very quickly in corporate foundation relations. So-called big bets are becoming increasingly popular among foundation funders. You've probably seen, Bill Gates says he's going to give $1.7 billion over 5 years on public education. That was a headline in the last couple of months. The MacArthur Foundation out of Chicago, they are doing a 100 and change, that's $100 million to address a challenge or issue of our time. So a lot of foundations are taking those kind of big bet approaches and trying to make a really significant impact in one area, which is why collaboration is something to look toward. Spending money more strategically with the ROI in mind. Both companies and foundations are using this model. Strategic and Philanthropy moves beyond traditional notions of giving back and charity. It believes the way to create change is to decide on a goal that matters, then figure out what it takes to achieve it. This means we have to think more seriously about mission alignment and the best opportunities for you. And also a tightening of focus and ROI, which we've already talked about. Another trend is a decline in the acceptance of unsolicited proposals. You've probably seen that, especially on foundation websites. It used to be, submit outside of an RFP opportunity with your best idea, and that is decreasing. But that also provides a great opportunity for us to work together to get to know a program officer and kind of pass those ideas along when you have them, if that is something that's of interest. And also, competition has increased. Collectively, the top 20 institutions raised over 28% of all gifts to higher education in 2017. And that's something I think we probably already know. I loved this quote from the president of the Rockefeller Foundation. We're trying to transform systems and create tipping points, not just make individual grants to individuals and organizations. And I think that really shows how significant some of these funding opportunities, and the reason we're seeing some of these big bets and a really strong shift toward strategic philanthropy and ROI. But I want to share this good news. Charitable giving to higher education entities is projected to rise 6.3% in 2017 and 6% in 2018. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm sorry, I put the projected in the wrong place. It rose 6.3% in 2017 and is expected to rise an additional 6% in 2018. So some common myths about corporations and foundations, and I just wanted to put this up. This is something that we talk a lot about in our world. Funding's easy to get, thought to be low-hanging fruit. Funders' focus is on university and unit priorities, and that's really not the case. As we talked about, they're really focused on their mission because they really want and need and are being directed by their boards to make a specific impact. And funders are likely to provide capital, operating support, long-term funding, and endowment funding, and that it's the source of frequent transformational gifts. And a transformational gift would be like a major, major, major gift. And as we just talked about, the big bets are out there. But when you if you have $1 million to give and you've been giving it out and 100,000 here, 100,000 here, and you pull it all together, you get 1, not 10. So, it's just, that has changed a little bit. So I wanted to take some time to go over a couple of funding opportunities that are either upcoming or that were interesting. This is the one I was talking about a moment ago. Have you ever seen such a vague RFP, if you will? Every time I read this, I'm like, there's nothing to read between the lines. So this is the $100 million grant opportunity that MacArthur started in 2016. It focused on the Sustainable Development Goals, especially poverty, health, and hunger. And also the winners in 2017 had a focus on programs outside the U.S., which I thought was interesting, but makes sense. They ended up giving, and I'll show the winners in a moment, $100 million plus 4 $15 million grants. They were judged on 4 criteria. I just think this is interesting. Meaningful, that it will tackle a significant problem that would really matter. Verifiable, that evidence shows that the proposal worked at least once somewhere and on some scale. Feasible, that the project has the right expertise, capacity, and costs. And durable, that the solution can have sustained and long-term impact. So as you can imagine, a lot of people put in a lot of very important and large requests without a lot of information. So these are the winners of those grants, and they're the organization that received it, as well as what they were planning to do with it. I'll give you just a second to look at that. So this winner, the focus was that the first one is the one that received $100 million. The focus was on Iraq, Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria. So. Then the Duke Endowment. This is one of the most prolific foundations in the Carolinas, giving $63 million in 2017. Fortunately, USC has an excellent relationship with this foundation, which has a strong focus on improving health and wellness. And in the area of health, their priorities are threefold: quality and safety of care to improve outcomes for patients and reduce cost, access to care and prevention, including funding community-based networks of care that improve access for low-income and uninsured, and prevention, focus on deploying strategies aimed at preventing chronic disease and improving the health of communities. And I hope you all received the joint call from the Office of Research and the Office of Corporate and Foundation Relations for the Internal Limited Submission Program. It is due Friday, November 9th. So last year, we submitted 4 requests after they reviewed it kind of offline, and then we submitted 4, and we received all 4, which was really exciting for us. It's about $1.5 million, and these were the programs that were funded. And the first one is a 3-year evaluation of the food share program. The second one is using GIS to have a really strong database of maps that local nonprofits and other groups and state groups can use to find out really high-level information, community zip code level information about health indicators. The next one was about diversity in nursing and really keeping an eye on making sure that we are catering to diverse populations and growing that part of the workforce. And then the last one was the Center for Colon Cancer Research. This is an opportunity from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation that I have just always thought, I wish we could find somebody at the Arnold School to apply. And I know we've received some Robert Wood Johnson, but this is, I don't know if you can see it, but it funds research that expands the evidence base needed to build a culture of health. Their mission is to support rigorously designed quantitative, qualitative, and mixed methods research that yields convincing findings regarding the population health, well-being, and equity impacts of specific policies, programs, and partnerships, especially interested in research examining the health impacts of programmatic or policy interventions that address factors outside the domain of healthcare services or public health practice. This is a highly competitive program. I actually spoke with the senior program officer in August, and she said 8% of LOIs are asked to submit a full proposal, and if you submit a full proposal, you have a 40% chance of getting funding. So it's very competitive, but and they are just looking for very, very, very rigorous research. And I have notes from that visit with her I'm happy to share with anybody if you're interested. And the reason I selected these opportunities to share with you and have a little discussion about is just because they're a little bit more broad-based. It might apply to some people, it might not, but it's more than a very specific health issue. And then the William T. Grant Foundation, I just wanted to go through this one really quickly because I thought it was a really exciting opportunity. It encourages university-based research institutes, schools, and centers to build sustained research practice partnerships with public agencies or nonprofit organizations in order to reduce inequality in youth outcomes. So this is to fund a partnership, really taking that research and putting it into action, which I think we'll see a lot more of in the future. A lot of calls that ask for that when appropriate. So what's next for the Arnold School of Public Health? These are some organizations that we're building relationships right now and really want to, I would love to see faculty apply to. And these are, again, kind of a little bit more broad-based. They're not disease-focused necessarily, unless there's specific RFPs for that. Well, American Cancer Society might be the only one there. So the biggest focus for Simon's Foundation is autism. And then Macy is about supporting the healthcare workforce. And I'd be happy to provide more information about either of those. They're really big organizations. They have a lot of priorities and a lot of funding opportunities. So before I open it up for questions, I just want to conclude by saying that we're here to support your work and interests. Please feel free to reach out anytime with a concept for funding or if you need support for a particular program or project. We're here as a resource, and I'm excited about the short workshop portion.